All right, we're back. The BMX Commentator Podcast, episode 12. And after numerous false starts, it seems to be a theme lately with these podcasts because I had some in episode 11 as well. I am over the moon to bring on one of my most wanted guests. I say that about everybody. I think I've said it about 10 times, but I'm going to carry on saying it again because everybody who I get on this podcast is just somebody I've wanted on for a long time. Fellow podcaster, BMX Junior World Champion 1996, mountain biker extraordinaire, Masters icon, Scott Beaumont. Scott, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I've been called worse. I'll take all those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for the intro.
That's
I'm good.
All right.
I'm good.
No
I'm
problem
baking.
at all.
It's hot over here.
Oh, yeah.
But,
if people who can't see this, we are recording on the hottest day of the year in the UK so far, and literally we're both two bald guys sat at the end of a video call, just sweating and absolutely roasting. So
for people in the world, it's probably like 24 degrees, but to us it feels hot.
Yeah, there'd be Californians walking around with a scarf and a hat on if they came to our country.
Exactly.
Do you know what reminds me of a story, actually? I remember being at the indoor for one of the very first Supercrosses. I think it was like 2013 or 2014, and it was a relatively warm day, and I'm walking around in t-shirt and shorts, and Greg Romero was there, and he was walking around in a puffer jacket and a woolly hat indoors at Manchester. That stands out to me like you wouldn't believe. So anyway, memories aside, like I say, Scott, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's like a meeting of minds, isn't it, with kind of like two podcasters. So I kind of just wanted to kind of go down that avenue really and just talk about, podcasting, because we both started almost at the same time. I was a little bit after you. So I wanted to see what you'd learned from running a podcast, what tips you might have for other people, that kind of stuff. So give us the background. How did the 96 podcast come about?
Well, that's a big question. A bigger question you'd imagine it would be. So the number 96 is the number that my dad used to race speedway and grass track with. So he was a professional motorcycle speedway rider on the ovals, for those people around the world who don't know what speedway is. And so he always ran with number 96. And so that's why I now use 96 on my race jerseys. Everyone sees 96 on the back of my jerseys. And so I've just carried that number on. And my podcast, during COVID, we all had a lot of time to think about life and things and stuff and painting the garden fence and everything else we did in COVID. And my black book of contacts is like yours, quite big, and we've got plenty of people to talk to. I'm lucky that I know a lot of people in other sports as well, so motorcycling especially. From 2012 onwards, I was actually the marketing director for Oliver's Mount motorcycle road race circuit up in Scarborough, which is Isle of Man TT motorcycle road race stuff. It's the only one in England, so I got to know a lot of people like Guy Martin, John McGuinness, Lee Johnston, Dean Harrison, all the who's who of motorcycle TT racing.
I was just about to say there's a lot of clanging sounds then as them names.
Yeah, but it was just part of those guys are just like Kai White. They're just like Beth Shriver. They're just like all these guys. They just ride bikes, and they're really normal people. But I got to know them all really well, and so during COVID, I started listening to a lot more podcasts. I'm particularly into motocross. Love the Pulp MX show. Love all that motocross stuff. Really into it. And just thought I'd love to do this. And it took me a little while to work out how to do a podcast and what to use and what software to use and how to do it. And finally pulled the pin about a year ago from now, actually, last June. Really wanted to speak to Thomas Slavic first and foremost. We've got a lot of four-cross history to talk about and a lot of UCI stuff to talk about. We had to going quite hard on UCI and their four-cross opinions and some of the decisions made in the history. So really wanted to talk to Thomas Slavic about that, wanted to record it. And so the 96 podcast was born because it was going to be across BMX, mountain bike, motorcycling, speedway, grass track, and anything else in between. Mark McCann's lined up for my podcast soon, who's been a long-term friend of mine who is now like an influencer. He does like Lamborghini jumps and all sorts of stuff. So I wanted to make it just generic and across the board, so people could come on and talk about anything they wanted to talk about. The 96 podcast isn't tied to any particular sport, although I must admit in the last 6 months it's gone heavily down the BMX road.
Yeah, and then you have ruffians like me and Issit and Julian Allen on there. So yeah, we're raising the standard and lowering the tone. So,
indeed.
But yeah, it's mega. So when you started the podcast and you got Thomas Slavic on for that first episode, did you have a vision in mind for the podcast, or was it just a case of let's crack on and see where we go with it?
It was let's crack on, because I just wanted to open up my phone book and start talking to people who I find quite interesting. So people who have a really interesting story. And I don't mind if my podcast goes on for 4 hours. If people want to keep talking, we'll keep talking about stuff. So we've set no time limits. We've just gone down the route of tell us your story. Tell us something we didn't know. And, some highlights so far have always been, well, obviously I know this, but some of Thomas Slavic's opinions on UCI and how things are running with UCI. Kyle Evans, how he started in the sport. Some of Quillen's Isidore's backstory. He was playing football for, if I remember right, it was Crystal Palace, I believe.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Talking to Sarah Jane Nichols about playing hockey for England and all sorts of these backstories that are going on that no one really knows about. It's just fascinating to hear what makes these people tick, how they got to where they are, and what the future plans are. So, started with Thomas and just started talking from there and carried on talking.
Yeah. I think we all kind of just start with just let's see where we go with it, because I had a BMX podcast back in 2008. I started really early on, but never really did anything with it, and just knocked it on the head. It's still out there on iTunes somewhere, but it was in the days where it was notoriously difficult to start a podcast and to get guests and that kind of stuff. I didn't have access to the people that I've got access to now. So yeah, it was a little bit more difficult, but I think if I'd have carried it on, I'd have probably been about 1,000 episodes deep by now.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's kind of led me round. I went round in a bit of a circle, and I'd had like a random thought about it, doing it again, and I discussed it with a friend of mine who lives in the US, and he's like, you really need to do it. You really need to do it. And
definitely.
I don't know how long it took you to get started, but I went on YouTube, watched one video from a company called Think Media, who told me what microphone to buy, what software to use, which is the software that we're using today to record this. And I was up and running in less than 3 days. I had the equipment within a week, and it was just right, let's go. So how long did it take you to get up and running?
Mine was a bit different. I went round in circles and carried on going round in circles down the rabbit hole. So what I couldn't find out was the hosting platform was what threw me the most. So I was looking at, you can spend $20 a month and you can have all this stuff and you can have all these features and things going on, or you can use Spotify and it's free. And I for the life of me, I was like, well, why is that free and the others you have to pay for? And I just couldn't get my head straight. No one could give me the answer to why. And then I did a course. I literally went down. I signed up to a course because I was like, I need to know. I just need to know the facts. As long as I've got facts, I'm good with everything. And as soon as I had the facts in front of me, it was just like, oh, we can get more demographics and more detail on your listener if you pay for it. And I'm like, I don't care. I just want to talk to people and put it on what in this case would be like the YouTube of a podcast. So yeah, I use Spotify and upload it there, and dead simple. It couldn't be any easier. But finding that information out was actually quite tricky.
Yeah, I use Spotify as well. I've been a Spotify premium subscriber for quite a while. They're not even paying us for an advert for this. It's ridiculous.
So it's available.
Yeah. So yeah, I started just using Spotify. I had a Spotify premium account, just got signed up, recorded the first episode as soon as I could, the one with Dave Hall from B73, and just whacked it up there and got on with it. And normally I'm like you, I will spend ages researching, looking at stuff. And this one I decided, right, I'm doing it, so let's get it done pretty quickly. And 70 quid on a microphone, some free software, and my Spotify account, and away we go. It's all good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's it. And sometimes you just got to dive in, and that's what happened to me is I recorded that one with Thomas, and even though it's one of my best interviews, the sound quality is awful on it. I mean, it's terrible, beyond terrible. And it's because I recorded it in GarageBand, which has like a million settings for bands and for musicians. Yeah. And then tried to take the echoes off it and all this kind of stuff. And I was getting so lost. And I was like, what I need is just to press a button, record, and stop it. And then just upload it, and that's it. And then bought the Rode microphones. Rode has an app. You just press record, and away you go. And that's as easy as it's become for me. So it's what I needed to find. So yeah. Off we go.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say to anybody who's starting a podcast, because I actually felt guilty when I was on your podcast last, when we were doing the Olympic stuff, because I was out working, I was sat in the car on a side street talking to you down my phone, and I'm thinking, this audio is going to be bloody awful. It's going to be terrible. And I think the best thing I did when I started the podcast was to buy a halfway decent microphone.
Yeah, same. I use Rode microphones, and they're great, obviously. But you know what? I kind of don't care. Like, I kind of like you in the car. It's the content for me that's key, not the quality of the sound. Because it could always be better. You could always be in a proper soundproof studio. You'll always be chasing that better and better. So if anyone's toying with starting a podcast, I'm just go for it, because even if Dale Holmes records his on a mobile phone. He literally just sets his mobile phone up on a tripod and records. And it sounds better than mine some of the times. It's just, if you got something to say, record it, upload it, get stuck in. I'm a massive podcast. Now I'm doing it and I've got my platform. I'm like, just go for it. Launch one. Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little bit more nerdy than that. I like some decent sound. I like some decent audio. I think I took that on board from the beginning because, like sometimes I'll listen to Dale's podcast and I'll hear somebody drilling in the background and I'll hear a siren as a police car or an ambulance goes past and that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't spoil my enjoyment of what I'm listening to at all, because I love everything that Dale's done, because it's all about the history of the sports and this, that, and the other, and it will never ever stop me listening to it. But I'm just so glad I bought a decent mic from the off, and I'm becoming a bit of a microphone nerd now. I'm just like I'm looking at stuff on Amazon and going, right, what's my next microphone going to be, and what can I do, and how can I make it better?
YouTube reviews of microphones and stuff soon.
Oh God, yeah. And I think I've already identified my dream microphone, which I think might be a Shure, like a proper top quality podcast.
I was looking at those initially. That was my first sort of, the first idea. And I was like, that's 400 quid.
I know. They're not cheap, are they? No. You can get I think it's a slightly cheaper version of that one for about 150 on Amazon. And I've already looked at it, so that might be another investment. And this mic I'm using now might end up being my guest mic. And I've also ordered as well an audio interface, so I can plug 2 XLR cables in. We're getting right down the rabbit hole here.
Love it.
So I can plug 2 XLR cables in and have a proper mobile podcast where I can talk to people and we can have studio quality sound. I'm starting to get very nerdy about it.
Well, there's one I listen to called Chasing the Racing, which is Dom Herbertson, who is a BSB rider, but he also does Isleman TT and all those road race stuff. And they've got a trailer that is all soundproofed out with like chairs and tables in there. So his bike goes in there to travel to the races. He takes the bike out and it's a mobile studio. It's brilliant. Awesome. It's really cool. I'll send you a picture later. It's really good.
Oh, definitely send it to me, because
that's the next level. That's what I want to do. Get like some mobile studio up and running.
Yeah, because I'm in the spare bedroom at our house, which is my office, and then I've already started to buy like bits and bats to put in the background of the shots and this, that, and the other. And I'm looking at cameras and, how can I make it like YouTube friendly and all that kind of thing. And it's like, the rabbit hole is deep.
You're going to be a podcast sensation. This is, on episode 12, by 20, I expect, millions of listeners to this. So it sounds, you got plans. It's good.
Yeah. Do you know what? Listener numbers was the one thing I actually wasn't bothered about.
Same.
It never bothered me in the slightest. It was a case of, right, let's get some bloody good content out there that people want to listen to, and get people enjoying it. And if it comes, it comes. And if I said to my wife right at the beginning, I went, if I only have 100 listeners per episode, I'm really not bothered, as long as the people who listen to it really like it. And I think I'm going to keep that mindset and that attitude going, because 100%. I don't think you can do good content by thinking any other way. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Ultimately, what are you chasing? If you're just chasing, I need to hit this mark, otherwise it's a failure. It's not failure. It's like what you're talking about. It's a story that's been told. It's the information you're getting. That's the important thing. If no one listens to it, not one person listens to it, I'm enjoying the chat, and that's what it's about for me. It's about one-on-one time that we don't get in the pens at the back of the start or the top of a mountain somewhere or whatever. It's actually like, right, we're going to focus on this, we're going to have a chat, and that's what makes a good podcast. So yeah, for me, I'm the same as you. Numbers, I just don't care about. It's people want to listen to it, great. If they don't, great. It's fine, whatever.
So who was, after Thomas Slavic, because I know you said you got Thomas on first, who was the guest for you who made you go, right, I'm in this for the long haul, I'm going to do this consistently, I'm going to make it happen? What was the conversation that made you kind of just tick that box?
Honestly, probably even just Thomas's, honestly, like the first one, like I knew it would be good. We're very good friends, obviously rivals on the track, but we both, our heart is set on making four-cross bigger and better. Like we believe in that sport more than anyone else. And obviously I run the national series now. I run the four-cross pro tour also, as well as racing in that. So we believe in that sport. And so the passion that we both have for what we do it oozes from both of us. If you watch Thomas's JBC four-cross Revelations race, it was live a couple of weeks ago on YouTube. Just have a little search for that race. You'll see what we're talking about. We want to take forecast to a place that people can't even imagine at this point. And so, we came up with some really interesting questions. We tried to really, put some detail and some meat on the bone of what we've been fighting for so many years about our sport. So that one was special. Like I always enjoy talking to him. We have some real deep conversations. But then I actually really enjoyed, I worked with yourself and started doing like the review shows of like the World Cups and with Jules on the national stuff. I really enjoyed those. That's a whole different dynamic where almost I take a bit of a back seat and you guys can really, get the nuts and bolts, the real detail of what's going on over to the listener. And that was the sort of the second wave, if it were. I do my interviews and pick some interesting people and try and ask some interesting questions. I always try and ask a question that I believe they've never been asked before. I think that's the angle I'm trying to go down in mine, is trying to really think about I think I've asked a few people in my interviews, what's the question you've always wanted to be asked but have never been asked? Which puts them on the spot a little bit, but it really is, because I always say, give a new rider a tip, and you can't say having fun. Because everyone just goes, just have fun on your bike. It's just, we get so ingrained in answering these questions. We get, as riders or as top sort of professional riders, they get so ingrained in being asked the same question over and over and over and over again. To try and really come up with something different. That's been the key for me going forwards after Thomas's, because I put so much thought into the very first one, into making sure the content was good, that I've then tried to really keep that going for each one, just tried to really drill down and get good answers and come up with good questions.
Okay, because I'm kind of a bit the same in that I wanted to have a podcast that was slightly different and try and find an angle within somebody's story and focus on that angle and see where it went. Because I had a look at the podcast kind of landscape, and obviously you were doing what you did. You were doing a mixture of interviews and review stuff and that kind of stuff. Tori and James at Coffee Chatter is very much current affairs, as I would describe it in BMX. Dills is very history based. So I was just like, what can I do that would be a little bit different? So I just went straight down find a portion of somebody's story and have a deep conversation about that particular thing, and maybe look at things like, biomechanics and strength and conditioning and all that kind of stuff that I've done recently. And Absolutely. nobody's podcast is, I would describe, as better or worse than anybody else's. I think it's just a way that you approach it. You've just got to have a slightly different viewpoint on it. And as long as that viewpoint's slightly different for me. I just enjoy everybody's content in different ways.
I think the thing with my podcast as well, it's always good to remember is, I'm how do you put this? I mean, I'm very much a businessman in my role in cycling. So I'm a pro rider. I get paid to race. Marketing is always first and foremost in the front of my mind. How does this look? How does it feel? Always looking for those angles to try and promote me and my sponsors to the absolute utmost best ability. And the podcast, again, going back to one of your earlier questions, the podcast came along as a real option to actually expand some of my sponsorship into different avenues. So many people talk about, being sponsored, and it's about your social media presence and that kind of thing. And I actually completely disagree with that nowadays. I think my opinion in the last 2 years has completely changed on how marketing and sponsorship works, especially in BMX, but also in mountain biking. It used to be about how many Instagram followers do you have, how many likes do you get, have you got the blue tick, what's your reach, what's your demographics, and it was all about this kind of these numbers that really meant nothing. Did it sell you more product? No one ever drilled down into did that work. And I remember doing a study with USN once upon a time when USN were my title sponsor, and they had Ryan Terry on their books. And Ryan Terry is an athlete with, a bodybuilder. He's got like 2 million followers. He's a real mega star in the fitness world. And they launched a new product, and they put that product out on his socials. And the feedback was really interesting because it was the first time I linked the social graph, how many likes, how many shares, how many reach, all that stuff, all the reach and everything, to what was happening next door in the sales room. And the sales didn't move one bit. So he launched his product, it's all over his socials, and the needle didn't move. And from that moment, the penny dropped to me. That's when it was like, okay, sponsorship is what some marketing people in these offices will tell you is important. I'm going to take this down a different avenue, and I'm going to, I think being the face and the voice of sponsorship, being at the events, talking to people, representing the brands, pushing it forwards is half of the battle. I think racing is well, it's not even half, say 30% of the battle. Racing, winning, being clean, being representing sponsors extremely well, being professional, that's 30%. But now I believe that being in people's ears, if people listen to what you're saying on a podcast, if people actually take note of what you're talking about, and you have impact that way, that has much more value to a sponsor or to an athlete in terms of promoting their brands than looking at photos on Instagram, scrolling past, clicking like, and keep on scrolling. I don't think that has any impact on you as a brand or you as what you're trying to portray to people. I think those days are just passing by so quickly now. Now, I think if you can actually interact with people on platforms like podcasts, then I think that has much more value to sponsorship and moving forward as professional athletes.
Yeah, because I was reading, actually, it's funny you should say that. I was reading an article the other day about a particular influencer who had 2.6 million followers over various different platforms, which I'm assuming will be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And she launched a clothing line off the back of it, mm-hmm. and didn't sell enough shirts on launch day to cover a minimum order. So there you go.
It feels like a penny drop moment coming here.
Yeah.
And a lot of these influencers paid for their followers initially. They had like massive investments and chuck money at having the numbers. But that just doesn't, if it means coming from Instagram, clicking like, and then actually going to a link and clicking through and doing something about it, it just falls flat. It falls down so hard.
Yeah.
And it has its place. It's lovely. It's all fluffy. It's great. But I just found the podcast to be a way of me not just promoting my own personal sponsors, but promoting the races that I'm helping to organise, or promoting just good things that are happening, good products, good things, good people. And it just seemed like the best way of doing that. So that was another reason for me to start the podcast.
Yeah, I think carrying on down that avenue, Scott, I think the person who kind of mixes those two worlds in really, really well at the minute, especially within BMX, is Barry Nobles. He has
I knew you were going to say Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, he has the social following. He's over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's all over Instagram. He tells a great story, involves his family, but then he's at all the races interacting with the kids. And that's how he's ended up winning Pro of the Year. And that's how he's ended up with a decent factory deal long after his pro days are over, whereas, Johnny McRad Pro, whoever you might want to see, just puts the same cookie cutter content on their Instagram, doing sprints, loading up a squat bar, all that kind of stuff. You've got to be able to do something different. And I think having that approachability is certainly key. And like you say, if you go on a podcast, hint, 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 to anybody who wants to come on, and be a guest at any point, you've got to kind of, there's no hiding behind filters. You've got to kind of explain and promote who you are and get people to kind of look beyond the image. And I think that scares a lot of people.
It's that iceberg moment, isn't it? It's what you see above the surface, what's below. And today is a great example of a day in the life of what I've done. People ask me about sponsorship and how have I been able to do this for so many years and how am I still a pro rider now. And the quick obvious answer is I'm UCI world ranked number 1 in 4-cross. I'm the world number 1 in elite in 4-cross, still at the very sharpest end of 4-cross. I'm national champion. I'm winning races. That's cool. That's enough to do it in mountain biking. But then, like today, for example, I've been to the gym first thing. There's nothing on my Instagram or stories or anything about that because it just doesn't matter. After that, I've done a corporate talk to a engineering company based in Surrey today who have paid me to go on to a Teams meeting with 100 people on there and inspire them ahead of Cycle to Work Day on Thursday this week. So that's been my next bit. Then I've gone off to Telford track and done some gates this afternoon. Now I'm back here. It's 5 to 6 at night and I'm doing a podcast with you. And that's anyone who thinks it's like an easy ride. You just ride bikes for a living. It's simple. Yeah, absolutely. Those things are fun. I've been to a gym. I've been doing gates. That's great. But it has been, I'm on hour 10 now of my day of doing stuff that helps me move forward as an athlete and helps to promote mountain biking, helps to promote BMXs. In the background here from earlier, I mean, I can actually swizzle my TV around, but that's my bike from earlier as I was doing a talk about Cycle to Work Day earlier, so that's in my kitchen now because I've been talking about it to corporate people, to 100 people who, as it turns out, one of the people listening to that talk I gave earlier, his son races in the South. He's done regional racing for last year. He works for his company. They make bridges over motorways in the UK. That's who I've been talking to. And one of them, all of a sudden is lit up like this is the best talk ever. And Barry Nobles, and I wouldn't compare myself to Barry Nobles, but people like us who are looking at the angle and trying to push not just ourselves, but if a sport gets bigger, if we appeal to some people, everything moves forward, and that's how I've been able to do this for so long. And also now how I'm trying to look at different things like podcasts to keep moving forwards.
Yeah. Rising tide lifts all boats, shall we say?
Correct.
I think that is the phrase. So yeah, can we dig in a bit deeper on that corporate talk? How did that come about?
I'm not actually sure how it came about. So the CEO of this company was at Goodwood Festival of Speed a couple of weeks ago. They were watching the dirt jump stuff. They knew they had some cycle to work activities planned for this week. It's Cycle to Work Day on Thursday this week. And they wanted a professional cyclist to give a talk about their career, about their history, and then also give some tips on to make people riding to work experience better on their bike. So saddle height, tire pressures, whatever. An hour-long talk. And they approached me and they said, someone at the dirt jumping at Goodwood has said, we don't do that, but we know someone who would be really good at doing that. And they gave my name and they Googled me, emailed me, got the gig, got paid, and promoted to 100 people, BMX, mountain biking. My story from when I was 4 years old, starting out racing for Birmingham Wheels and racing European Championships at 7 years old, all the way up to racing the Snow Bike World Championships this year in Châtel, being UCI number 1 now, having a podcast, racing BMX, racing mountain bikes, all the stuff. And this is the point, isn't it? Like tomorrow I drive to Czech Republic where I've got to go on Czech TV on Thursday when we get there to promote the 4-Cross Pro Tour this weekend. And my diary is just stacked with not just training, but training, promotional, anything activity that, I just want to leave my sports plural, BMX and mountain bikes, but four cross BMX, it's all got such a strong place in my heart, but I want to leave them in a better place than when I found them. Obviously that journey has taken now me over 40 years of doing that, but I work tirelessly every day just to make sure that the sport is left in a better place.
Nice. I like that a lot.
Some people, say that they love BMX, they love mountain biking, but I love it. I mean, I'm all in. Like, I'm literally all in. Our life, mine, Holly, Astrid, our lives now revolve around, not only am I racing BMX, I've been fortunate enough to win the Masters National Series this year, which I'm stoked about. It's my first national number one in 30 years, which, how weird does that sound? That's the most bonkers phrase ever, but that goes back to when I was full-time BMX, so I've got the number one plate. But we, as a family, we're also now running the British Four Cross Series. It's a 10-round series. So I organise and run that. I'm not allowed to race in it because I'm organising it. I'm doing a podcast. I'm racing Four Cross Pro Tour. I'll be at Four Cross National Champs. So we're spinning all these plates, but it's because literally I love what I do. I love the sport. It needs to be better. It needs to be bigger. Everything from the tracks. We need more tracks. We need better tracks. We need more indoor stuff. We need elites paid massive amounts of money. They need to be rock stars. I need my four cross series to be bigger and better. We need to get more people racing four cross. I want people listening to podcasts and listening to other people's interesting stories. It's and that's how we live our life. That's what I'm about. And again, I'm going off topic a little bit here, but why did I start the podcast? Because it's like, well, can this get one more kid racing? Can this get, one more something happening? Yes, it can. Let's do it. Let's just go for it, and it's added to the list and do it.
Brilliant. Absolutely love that answer, Scott. Even though we've been all around the houses with it, it's perfectly fine. It's superb content, which is what we're all about. Has there ever been a guest on your podcast that has surprised you in some way, and what was that surprise?
Probably like the Kyle Evans story of how he started BMX, how he found a BMX track, which was on the back of a motorbike of his dad with the police chasing them, and they shot down a side sort of road and hid from the police, and then saw a BMX track and then started BMX. I thought that was quite a cool story. Like it.
Yeah, I was probably at Midlanks that Wednesday night or whatever it was.
Were.
I was probably there doing gates when he rocked up. And bizarrely enough, here's another story for you. I actually met Kyle for the first time a long time before he started riding BMX. So I'll quickly dive into the story. I won't let it run for too long. But Kyle's childhood best friend used to live 4 doors away from me in Wigan. And I was still racing at that point, and his little mate Danny, who lived 4 doors up, was racing schoolboy motocross, as was Kyle at that time. And Danny used to come down to my house, knock on the front door. Can I borrow a pump? Can I borrow some tools? Can I borrow this? Can I borrow that? And he would knock on my door about twice a week. And then one day he knocked on our front door and asked to borrow a pump, I think it was. And he had another scruffy little urchin stood right next to him. And that scruffy little urchin was Kyle Evans. He was about 9.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't figure it out until later on. So yeah, Carl was literally a little whippersnapper the first time I met him. So
some other guests. I really enjoyed talking to Kai recently. That episode just went live last week on my podcast. That was really interesting. You catch Kai on different days. He's got plenty to say or not much to say, and he really opened up and gave us some great insight on, how his fitness is going into Olympics this year and where he's at with his injuries and stuff. And that was just fascinating. Barry Noble was at World Champs. We found a room and we, had a good sort of hour and a half chat. That was fascinating as well. I think me and Barry are really, really quite similar people, like how we go about our promotion stuff. He's really gone down a YouTube channel route. I haven't done that particularly. I have a YouTube, but I don't care for it much. But yeah, we're generally how we try and push things out to more people. That's exactly, on the same sort of. So that was really interesting. Sarah J. Nichols had some things that I didn't know about her. Like I say, And it's always a fascinating talk to Dale Holmes. I mean, I could talk to Dale for for days and days. And what I'd love to do at some point, I'd love to go to California. I want to get Paul Roberts on with Dale Holmes, because I think, I'm definitely come with some questions for those two that have probably never been asked before, and try and get them to delve deep into, because obviously their memories are just unbelievable for BMX, and, try and fill in some blanks that I can't remember when I was a kid, try and get them on and answer some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, I don't know if you kind of have the same opinion of me, because I've done the majority of my podcasts online at the moment. Obviously, we're recording online because we're not together, but the one where I've done it in person, when I sat down with John Lee, I just thought that was just such just way better in terms of the conversation. I mean, I love my online stuff, and I think we're having a good conversation now, but I think if you sat in the same room with somebody and you're looking at them in the eye, and you've got all those social cues, the body language, everything else, if you can have a one-to-one conversation with somebody in person, I just think you'll get even better content than we're getting already.
Yeah, and I've been lucky because I've been in person with Thomas Slavic, with Tracy Mosley, Simon Payton. The Alan Milway one I did was really interesting, because he's a coach to G. Atherton and Charlie Hatton, all the world championship downhillers. That was fascinating. But again, like you say, you get to see in their eyes, you really get some detail. And but yeah, the only one recently I haven't done in person would be Kai White, and it turned out to be a great interview anyway. But I totally agree, like being in person it's wonderful. It's a great experience, and you really feel like you're unpicking some, 2 or 3 times people have said to me during the interview, it's like, oh, no one's asked me that before, and oh, I wasn't expecting that kind of, and you're like, oh, we're onto it here, let's keep talking, and I think Kyle said, I've never told anyone this before, and I'm like, keep talking, Sunshine, you just keep on going, spill it
Absolutely.
out. This is great, and it's not about how many likes or numbers, it's just like, I want to hear this is great. If we're counselling here, then let's hear it. Let's keep on talking. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even taken the step of investing in a little bit more of equipment, so I can do, like I think I said that earlier on, do some on the road stuff. Bought an audio interface, another microphone, and all that kind of stuff, because I'm desperate to do more of that in person stuff, because I just find it. I think it's just better.
Well, you get addicted to it, don't you? It's great. And I'm like I say, I drive to Czech Republic tomorrow, and I'm with Thomas again on Friday. And I think we're lined up to do another one talking about all his urban downhill stuff that he does on Red Bull. I'm sure you've seen it down the streets.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk to him about that. Like, how does that feel? Like, what makes do you consider like it's not just injury there, it's like really serious injury stuff, what goes for you? How do you focus? How do you get your mind in the right place? So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll do that this week and have a bit of a catch up with Thomas. He'll be the second time guest on my show, but I think we'll have a sound quality better now, and I've got plenty more stuff to ask him, so it'll be good.
Good. Who is your dream guest who you would like on but have not had on yet?
Guy Martin.
Right, okay.
Because I want Guy Martin on to talk about his mountain biking, because he's obviously known as the motorcycle guy, as the the TV personality now, the Isle of Man TT guy. But if you see him, he's always in his Hope shorts, his Hope jacket. He's desperate just to talk about cycling and mountain bikes, and no one wants to ask him about it. So I have his sister's telephone number, and at some point we'll be giving her a call and saying, oh, because he doesn't give his number to anyone. You can't get hold of Guy Martin. He's obviously for obvious reasons. But love to have him on pretty soon and talk to him about mountain biking. He's done that the Colorado race. I can't think where it's like 20 days over the Rocky Mountains, and he's done all sorts of stuff on his mountain bike, and no one's really asked him about it. I think he's desperate.
Right.
But of course, it's dead easy to go down the obvious routes for me. I'm a motocross nut, so it'd be Chad Reed, James Stewart, Ricky Carmichael, any of these guys. Pick a motocross guy. I'm all in. I'll go and interview those all day long.
Absolutely. I love a bit of Supercross as well, so I'm totally with you on that one.
Yeah.
So who is your favourite Supercross rider of all time?
Carmichael.
Yeah.
I just thought he was brilliant. But, it's close with Rick Johnson. I was a massive Rick Johnson fan back in the 80s, 90s. So, yeah, just the people who make that sport look easy and dominate and become like these goats, it just blows my mind how, because I've walked around a Supercross track, those ruts, how they make it look easy, absolutely mind blowing. So they're my ultimate athletes. I put Supercross guys up on a pedestal so high. It's like the other year when Bernard Kerr, another guy who's going to come on my podcast pretty soon, he said yes. So, but Bernard Kerr qualified or tried to qualify for Anaheim Supercross, and he was actually refused at the last minute. And the respect I've got for Bernard, not for when he wins hardline or not for when he podiums at a World Cup downhill, for having a go at the Supercross. I could do a podcast for 2 hours just talking about that Supercross experience, because that is not for the, hitting a Supercross triple with those ruts in it. Hats off, absolute hats off. So yeah,
absolutely. I was always a fan of basically any motocross or Supercross racer with like a BMX background or a BMX connection.
Sure. So McGrath and
McGrath, Marvin Muscan, because he's friends with Joris Dorday, and
that's it.
Cole Seeley, was it Cole Seeley? It was, wasn't it? He used to ride as well.
I wonder if Muskin will be at the Olympics this year at BMX on Friday.
I don't know. I don't know, because he's test riding. He's test riding for KTM, I believe.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, I met him very briefly at the Worlds in France. Yeah, he's tight with Dorday, and Christian Craig's friends with Connor Fields, and so if there's a BMX connection there at Supercross, I always root for those guys. I always want to see them do well.
It's pretty cool now, because at World Cup downhill, we've got Randy Lawrence, his son Ryder Lawrence is doing downhill for Intense. So Randy Lawrence is at all the World Cups. So I was at Val di Sole a few weeks ago, and he annoyingly, I said, do you want to come, let's have a quick chat. I want to talk about motocross and McGrath and being McGrath's mechanic and all that. And he's like, yes, yeah, no problem. But he said, yes, no problem. I was literally 10 miles down the road on my way home. He was like, he just didn't check his phone much and whatever. So, but that's pretty cool. Like Randy Lawrence, obviously, he's got loads of connections in Supercross and stuff. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure you can make that one happen at some point. I'd love to be in the room when that happened.
Well, we'll get you in.
That would be amazing if you need a guest presenter or anything. But yeah, that would be absolutely awesome.
But I think with podcast, again, it's what we said at the start. These are just normal people. It's not Randy Lawrence McGrath's mechanic. It's just Randy. He's just at a race, and you just go and ask him. And most of these people will always say yes. And that's another tip for anyone starting a podcast. Just go and just message Kai White, message Barry Nobles. They want to talk. People do want to, it's good for them personally as sponsorship and media and that kind of thing. But I think a lot of these guys, they want to tell their story before no one asks them about a story anymore. So
yeah. Is there subject matter within the podcast that you would love to touch on or would never touch on? Is there anything that you think I just couldn't go down that route?
When me and Thomas both retire from racing, we will open the can up on what really happened with Four-Cross in the World Cup.
That would be a conversation.
There's probably only me and Thomas know about it, and it's ultimately we'd probably end up not racing bikes ever again. We'd be banned. So, but we know about it. So one day it'll come out, and it is not fair what happens to Four-Cross. It should be in the World Cup now. It was removed for all the wrong reasons. It was removed on lies and deceit, and it's not on what UCI did to Four-Cross, and we're slowly but surely rebuilding it back to a really good, happy place. I mean, the British Four-Cross series couldn't be going any better. We just returned from Shredded at the weekend. It was over 40 years of racing. It was one of the best weekends of racing I've ever had in my life. It was just phenomenal. I wasn't even racing. I was just there being a part of it. It was just a brilliant weekend, and Four-Cross is on the up, and we will open that Pandora's box at one day on. When I'm retired from racing, I'll just name and shame. I don't care, because it's disgusting what they did to you, Four-Cross.
Right. Okay. Because
there you go. Stay tuned.
That's one to listen to, because just going on to the Four-Cross side of things, I know we're dipping away from podcasting a little bit, but Four-Cross as a sport seems to be, as you've just alluded to, having something of a resurgence in the UK. There's a lot more BMXers getting involved with it. Obviously, they're quite closely related. I'm sure if I put my lad on a Four-Cross bike, he would absolutely love it as well. But we've neither got the time nor the energy, I think, at the minute with everything that's going on in BMX. So But yeah, like the four cross side, I think would be absolutely awesome. What would you like to see happening four cross over the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
Nationally, I need to see regional events, club structure built, some local Wednesday night racing going on at four cross tracks. That starts with them needing start gates, which we're working on at the minute, that all tracks will have a start gate so they can run local races, create a local team, and then dip international. At the minute, the entry point for four cross is British four cross series. So it's very daunting, very intimidating. And the reality is anything but. The reality is it's very accessible. Everyone wants to help you. Everyone's there having a great time, having lots of fun. I'm sure you saw from the socials at the weekend, it was just such a great place to be. It's everything that kind of BMX isn't, like all the rules and restrictions and regulations it's just gone. It's a very chilled weekend. When you do your practice, you can just dip out the track any point down the track. You can duck under a tape and get back on the track and go down. It's open track. It's practice. Have fun. Enjoy it. Learn the track. It's not this full laps only, tuck your shirt in kind of stuff. And that's what people are loving about it, is the fact it has that essence, In terms of the Pro Tour, I would like to, first of all, in the very short term, see it enter Crankworks. I think that's a real possibility going forwards. That Bas van Steenbergen came to JBC a couple of weeks ago, and he said it was just blew his mind how good four-cross was. Bearing in mind, he does Crankworks, he does slopestyle and filming projects. He was at Grands last year racing elite men. He's a jack of all trades. He'll do it all on two wheels. He was like, four-cross is the best thing he's ever done in his life. At the weekend, I had people at British four-cross saying that their kids now want to finish BMX and just do four-cross. They enjoyed it that much. So we know how good the sport is. It's really good fun. One of my main sponsors has referred to it as, this is actually really bicycle motocross. This is bicycles doing motocross on a motocross track. It's got that much more of that essence about it, whereas BMX now is more like supercross, really funky. We're more like outdoor motocross, and I think that's a real good way to look at it. I want to see four-cross. I think four-cross will be seen by someone at Warner Brothers Discovery. And I think when someone at Warner Brothers Discovery looks at the sport, sees what it can bring to the table, then I think we'll be on TV. And I think in the next 5 years that happens, and then it opens up a whole new world of where the sport goes. Because up until now, the restriction from UCI on TV, right, on how it can be seen on TV, has completely hampered the whole sport. And as soon as the shackles are released, because UCI aren't directly controlling the World Cup now, it's more from Discovery. Now I think is the option for them to see it, because FIS has ski cross, it has border cross, it has dual slalom, it has downhill, supergiant, it has cross country skiing, it has the ski flying with the ski jump stuff. They embrace all types of ski competition, whereas UCI have single-handedly, literally frozen out four-cross. And it's clearly what, in mountain bike terms, you have cross country, downhill, enduro. Now we have short track cross country to try and make it more exciting. And, but ultimately four-cross is the action-packed mountain bike event. If it was designed by Eurosport created the entire sport. So we know it's TV friendly. It's very simple for a TV audience to follow. The top two go for each round. It's knockout all the way, same as BMX. Knockout, 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 eventual winner crowned. In mountain biking, you have to wait 2 hours for a cross-country race to finish to find out who that is. Or in downhill, You're watching 30 riders come down a hill, and the guy who starts in 29th could win the race. And so for a TV audience that isn't into mountain biking, that's not easy to follow. Whereas ours, the last race of the day, the winner's crowned. And that's something that no other action-based mountain bike event delivers. And that's why I think when we're in an age of mountain biking now going down the TV route so heavily, someone somewhere is going to look at us and go, hang on a minute, why isn't this involved in the greater World Cup side of things? And that's when the big conversation starts.
Yeah, because if you end up like you say, if you end up on like as part of Crankworks and on Red Bull TV and that kind of stuff, it's almost like the magic fairy dust in terms of coolness and marketing and everything else. It automatically elevates your sport by a factor of 5.
Yeah.
So it's like you say, it's ripe for that kind of television, and I think the viewing figures would actually be very, very good. And I think, you know, BMX racing, if it ever happened, could benefit from the same thing, from that magic fairy dust. So,
you know, if you look at JBC a couple of weeks ago, you know, we're at Thomas Slavik's home track. We're jumping 2 60-foot double jumps. 60 foot.
Right.
60-foot double
I'm going to have
jumps.
to go back and look at this on YouTube.
60-foot double jump. We're jumping that and landing into a wooded section, 4 abreast, back out the wooded section into a rhythm section that it looks at home on any BMX track, like serious third straight stuff, into a wall ride. You know, we've got a drop off out the start. It's got all these ingredients. It's got this action packed stuff, and UCI are like as if it doesn't exist.
Right.
And that's you know, there's, like I say, there's a lot to unpick, and I'm not at liberty to open it all up here and now, but
yeah,
four cross is cool, it's exciting, it's fun, and British cycling are now referring to it as the gateway to gravity. At 7 years old, you can start four cross, whereas downhill you can't start till 13 years old. So they're using it as this gateway to gravity, where you're starting four cross, it's in a controlled area, you're learning skills, you're racing against people, and you might move on to downhill or enduro or whatever you want to do. And that's a good starting point, I think, for the sport to start building. And that's what's helped me this year as the organizer to really appeal to BMX riders. I now guarantee it won't clash with any BMX nationals, so families can do both sports. And the future's really bright for four cross. It's just had a real torrid 10 years of being, you know, just hammered down by, not even hammered down, just the door shut, locked and triple locked by UCI, and it's not coming out. And it's been it's just, you know, it's a story to tell, and we will tell it one day. Okay.
Yeah, we can leave that one there. You've just left us on tenterhooks. You've got that open loop, and everybody's going to be hanging on now. I want to know why.
A hook and tease on a podcast. Yeah, it always goes well.
Absolutely. It always goes well. So with regards to the future of the 96 podcast, you know, you've already said you wanted to interview Guy Martin. What is the future of the 96 podcast? How do you see it developing?
We'll just keep having fun with it. It's as I've alluded to a couple of times in this already, you know, it's just time. As long as I've got time, I can't wait to do the next one. So I always try and squeeze them in when I can. And I think we'll just do more of the same. I can't see it changing much. I you know, beyond my professional racing career, can I see myself actually making it become like an actual paying podcast? Yeah, possibly. I think yours could. I think the options are there for all of us, aren't they? We can totally go out there and monetize these podcasts and make something from it. So we'll just see where it goes. At the minute, I'm just having fun. I love our review shows. I could talk to you and Jules. I have such a giggle doing those shows. It's brilliant. So yeah, we'll keep doing what we're doing. I think people like what we're doing, and yeah, there's no major changes coming anytime soon. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, no plans. It would just be janky, and we'll crack on with it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I suppose as we get to the end of this, Scott, have you got any advice that you would like to offer to a young kid there who wants to be a podcaster, who wants to do their thing? What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
Just have fun. I'm just joking.
You're not allowed to say that.
Not allowed to say just have fun. I would say to anyone, just have a go, because it's it really is very simple. You are just talking, and sometimes the hardest thing to do is say the first word. And for me, it's always welcome back to the 96 podcast, and that's when you go into game mode. Essentially, as soon as I say those words, then we start rolling. And yeah, welcome back to the 96 podcast, and away we go. And you just got to find out, you know, have a little plan. Definitely make some notes. Definitely note some questions down. You need to make sure you've got the questions. Yeah, just have fun with it. We only live once. If you enjoy talking to people, go and chat to them and record it. Sometimes you never know what might come out.
Yeah. As they say on the Think Media YouTube channel, you've just got to hit record. That is the tagline. So I just run with that, get on with it. I mean, you just said about making notes, and normally I make copious amounts of notes, and today I've done absolutely none and just freestyled it. And I think it's one of the best conversations I've had so far on the podcast. So
I guess it's no new guest, isn't it? I guess
we
could talk absolutely all night long, but
we could. So brilliant. I think that is an amazing place to wrap it up. Scott Beaumont, businessman, rider, icon, and many other descriptions that he's too shy to.
Rich, easy. Just Scott who rides a bike.
Scott who rides a bike.
Scott who rides a bike and can certainly talk, and that's about, if I can remember as that'll be fine.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'll let you get back to the family and enjoy your evening.
Give us a listen. Make sure you like and subscribe. 96 Podcast. If you want to see me, it's at Beaumont Racing, and come have a go at Four Cross. I'll see you at a BMX race. Life's too short. It's on 2 wheels. Just get involved. Have some fun. Go and talk to some people. Record it. Make a podcast. There's all my advice. Have fun.
Brilliant.
Right.
Thanks, Scott. I'll see you soon at another race.
Take care. Cheers, Rich.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.